Greetings, everyone. Today is Sunday, May 3rd, 2020. Beautiful, beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hello, my dear cousin. Good to see you. If they fall out, it says low network connection, just reboot and come back in. I can see that something's happening here. So anyway, we're going to continue the reading of the Kybalion, Hermetic philosophy, ancient philosophy. Alafia, sweetheart. And written originally, 1908 is when it was published by the Yogi Publication Society. The author, the three initiates, a primer in spiritual science and universal law. And we blessing Sister Mamjada. So, primer in universal law. And we've just been going through it chapter by chapter, lesson by lesson, and allowing ourselves to sink in the truth during these times to support us in our growth and expression of our magnificent in chaotic space. Because it is a little chaotic out there, right? So step inside with the universal principle. Chapter 12. Causation. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. The great sixth Hermetic principle, the principle of cause and effect, embodies the truth that law pervades the universe, that nothing happens by chance, that chance is merely a term indicating cause existing but not recognized or perceived, that phenomena is continuous, without break or exception. The principle of cause and effect underlies all scientific thought, ancient and modern, and was enunciated by the Hermetic teachers in the earliest days. While many and varied disputes between the many schools of thoughts have since arisen, these disputes have been principally upon the details of the operation of the principle, and still more often upon the meaning of certain words. The underlying principle of cause and effect has been accepted as correct by practically all the thinkers of the world worthy of the name. To think otherwise would be to take the phenomena of the universe from the domain of law and order and to relegate it to the control of the imaginary, chance. A little consideration will show anyone that there is in reality no such thing as pure chance. Webster defines the word as follows: chance, a supposed agent or mode of activity other than a force, law, or purpose. The operation or activity of such agent, the supposed effect of such an agent, a happening, fortuity, causality, etc. Casualty, etc. But a little consideration will show you there can be no such agent as chance in the sense of something outside of law, something outside of cause and effect. How could there be a something acting in the phenomenal universe independent of the laws, order, and continuity of the latter? Such a something would be entirely independent of the orderly trend of the universe, and therefore superior to it. We can imagine nothing outside of the all being outside of the law, and that only because the all is the law in itself. There is no room in the universe for a something outside of and independent of law. The existence of such a something would render all natural laws ineffective and would plunge the universe into chaotic disorder and lawlessness. A careful examination will show that what we call chance is merely an expression relating to obscure causes, causes that we cannot perceive, causes that we cannot understand. The word chance is derived from a word meaning, in quotes, to fall, as the falling of dice. The idea being that the fall of the dice and many other happenings are merely a happening unrelated to any cause. And this is the sense in which the term is generally employed. But when the matter is closely examined, it is seen that there is no chance whatsoever about the fall of the dice. Each time a die falls and displays a certain number, it obeys a law as infallible as that which governs the revolution of the planets around the sun. Back of the fall of the die are causes, or chains of causes, running back further than the mind can follow. The position of the die in the box, the amount of muscular energy expended in the throw, the condition of the table, etc., etc., all are causes, the effect of which may be seen. But back of these seen causes, there are chains of unseen preceding causes, all of which had a bearing upon the number of the die which fell uppermost. If a die be cast a great number of times, it will be found that the numbers shown will be about equal. That is, there will be an equal number of 1 spot, 2 spot, etc. coming uppermost. Toss a penny in the air, and it may either come down heads or tails. But make a sufficient number of tosses, and the heads and tails will be about even up. This is the operation of the law of average. But both the average and the single toss come under the law of cause and effect. And if we were able to examine into the preceding causes, it would be clearly seen that it was simply impossible for the die to fall other than it did, under the same circumstances and at the same time. Given the same causes, the same results will follow. There is always a cause and a because to every event. Nothing ever happens without a cause, or rather a chain of causes. Some confusion has arisen in the minds of persons considering this principle from the fact that they were unable to explain how one thing could cause another thing, that is, be the creator of the second thing. As a matter of fact, no thing ever causes or creates another thing. Cause and effect deals merely with events. An event is that which comes, arrives, or happens as a result of consequent of some preceding event. No event creates another event, but is merely a preceding link in the great orderly chain of events following from the creative energy of the all. There is a continuity between all events precedent, consequent, and subsequent. There is a relation existing between everything that has gone before and everything that follows. A stone is dislodged from a mountainside and crashes through a roof of a cottage in the valley below. At first sight, we regard this as a chance effect, but when we examine the matter, we find a great chain of causes behind it. In the first place, there was the rain which softened the earth, supporting the stone, and which allowed it to fall. Then back of that was the influence of the sun, other rains, etc., which gradually disintegrated the piece of rock from a larger piece. Then there were the causes which led to the formation of the mountain, and its upheaval by convulsions of nature, and so on, ad infinitum. Then we might follow up the causes behind the rain, etc. Then we might consider the existence of the roof. In short, we would soon find ourselves in a mesh of cause and effect, from which we would soon strive to extricate ourselves. Just as a man has 2 parents, and 4 grandparents, and 8 great-grandparents, and 16 great-great-grandparents, and so on, until when we say 40 generations are calculated, the numbers of ancestors run into many millions. So it is with the number of causes behind even the most trifling event or phenomena, such as the passage of a tiny speck of soot before your eye. It is not an easy matter to trace the bit of soot back to the early period of the world's history, when it formed a part of a massive tree trunk, which was afterward converted into coal, and so on, until as the speck of soot, it now passes before your vision on its way to other adventures. And a mighty chain of events, causes, and effects brought it to its present condition. And the latter is but one of the chain of events which will go to produce other than events hundreds of years from now. One of the series of events arising from the tiny bit of soot was the writing of these lines, which caused the typewriter to perform certain work, the proofreader to do likewise, and which will arouse certain thoughts in your mind and that of others, which in turn will affect others, and so on, and so on, and on, beyond the ability of man to think any further, and all from the passage of a tiny bit of soot, all of which shows the relativity and association of things, and the further fact that there is no great, there is no small, in the mind that causeth all. I'll say it again, in quotes. There is no great, there is no small, in the mind that causeth all. Stop to think a moment. If a certain man or woman had not met a certain man or woman away back in the dim period of the Stone Age, you who are now reading these lines would not now be here. And if perhaps the same couple had failed to meet, we who now write these lines would not now be here. And the very act of writing on our part and the act of reading on yours will affect not only the respective lives of yourself and ourselves, but will also have a direct or indirect effect upon many other people now living and who will live in the ages to come. Every thought we think, every act we perform, has its direct and indirect results which fit into the great chain of cause and effect. We do not wish to enter into a consideration of free will or determinism in this work for various reasons. Among the many reasons is the principal one that neither side of the controversy is entirely right. In fact, both sides are partially right according to the Hermetic teachings. The principle of polarity shows that both are but half-truths, the opposite poles of truth. The teachings are that a man or woman may both be free and yet bound by necessity, depending upon the meaning of the terms and the height of truth from which the matter is examined. The ancient writers express the matter thus: the further the creation is from the center, the more it is bound. The nearer the center it reaches, the nearer free is it. The majority of people are more or less the slaves of heredity, environment, etc., and manifest very little freedom. They are swayed by the opinions, customs, and thoughts of the outside world, and also by their emotions, feelings, moods, etc. They manifest no mastery worthy of the name. They indignantly repudiate this assertion, saying, in quotes, "Why, I certainly am free to act and do as I please. I do just what I want to do," unquote. But they fail to explain whence arise the, quote, "want to," unquote, and, in quotes, "as I please," unquote. What makes them want to do one thing in preference to another? What makes them please to do this and not do that? Is there no because to their pleasing and wanting? The master can change these pleases and wants into others at the opposite end of the mental pole. He or she is able to will, instead of to will becoming some feeling, mood, emotion, or environmental suggestion arouses a tendency or desire within him to do. The majority of people are carried along like the falling stone, obedient to their environment, obedient to outside influences and internal moods, desires, etc. Not to speak of the desires and wills of others stronger than themselves, heredity, environment, and suggestion carrying them along without resistance on their part or the exercise of the will, the capital will. Moved like the pawns on the checkerboard of life, they play their parts and are laid aside after the game is over. But the masters, knowing the rules of the game, rise above the plane of material life and placing themselves in touch with the higher powers of their nature, dominate their own moods, characters, qualities, and polarity, as well as the environment surrounding them, and thus become movers in the games instead of pawns, causes instead of effects. The masters do not escape the causation of the higher planes, but they fall in with the higher laws and thus master circumstance on the lower plane. I will repeat it. I don't even need to use my own words. The masters, meaning that one who is able to master and be adept at the control, at the elevation of their higher self. The masters do not escape the causation of the higher planes, but they fall on the lower plane. They thus form a conscious part of the law. Instead of being mere blind serve on the higher planes, they rule on the material planes. The law is always in operation. Thing as chance. The blind goddess has been abolished by reason. We are able to see now with eyes made clear by knowledge that everything is governed by universal law, that the infinite number of laws are but manifestations of the one great law, the law. It is true indeed that not a sparrow drops unnoticed. Hairs on our head are numbered, as the scriptures have said. There is nothing outside of law, nothing that happens contrary to it. And yet, do not make the mistake of supposing that man or woman is but a blind automation. Far from that. The Hermetic teachings are that we may use laws, the big laws, to overcome the higher will always prevail against the lower, until at last we have reached the stage in which we seek refuge in the laws, the phenomenal laws to scorn. Are you able to grasp the inner meaning of this? And that's the end of the reading of that word of chapter 12 of the Kybalion, a teaching on the universal laws, where an understanding of them to master your life and be a light unto others, a teacher on the others. All right, so tomorrow, chapter 13, we are almost done with this wonderful little book. And so I'll see you tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. And if you need to catch up, these are scrolled on my page, or you can go to YouTube and type in the Kybalion, hear me, or look at, or whatever, and get the information that way. Okay, take care, blessings, and have a wonderful Sunday evening. I appreciate you joining.